And we can talk to Dr. Catherine Haddon, who is Senior Fellow at the Institute for Government. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this, but we're on to our fourth Chancellor this year, I think. Liz Truss's position as Prime Minister, that isn't a given now, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, obviously, we knew that even before the events of today, that there's been a lot of speculation in her party. But I mean, that is almost usual course for government these days. We've spent the last year with a huge amount of speculation. I think what's really interesting at the moment is actually the questions for the short-term governing that her government needs to do. She has appointed somebody who is a veteran cabinet minister, very experienced in the health brief of dealing with public services with large budgets and so forth, but hasn't worked in the Treasury. And at the same time, you know, she's about to go out and give this statement. We don't know what that will include, but obviously a lot of speculation about what it means for economic policy. And meanwhile, from the new Chancellor's point of view, he has got this medium-term fiscal statements, as it's being called, which is another of these sort of strange phrases, which basically means another sort of almost mini budget in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks on Monday, and also the statement from the Office of Budget Responsibility with forecast. So that's a tall order to suddenly take over in the middle of already a bit of a financial crisis, not knowing how the markets are going to react. We often at the Institute, we talk about the problems of reshuffles and the churn of ministers. You don't have quite this level of churn. We're normally talking about the problems of moving them on after 18 months, 2 years, but it's going to be a very tall order for Jeremy Hunt to get to grips with that. And a big task for the Treasury as well, because they've had a huge amount of upheaval in the last month, losing a permanent secretary, finally getting another, only to then lose their chancellor and get another. So it really is, you know, a big challenge for them to make sure that there's stable economic policy from here on in. And that's what a lot of people will be looking for.
Do you get the impression that, you know, she's going to maybe do U-turns on the mini budget, but also politically, she's almost changing her political direction. She's trying to sort of reach out to other parts of the Conservative Party that would say that they've been alienated by her. She's trying to bring them into her tent by bringing in Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor.
Yeah, I mean, for any Prime Minister, managing the backbenches, parliamentary relationships is crucially important. But in recent years, a lot of that has almost been forgotten, got very confused. We had Theresa May with minority governments, almost not realising that actually governing as a minority is quite difficult. We got so used to that, people almost forgot that even when you're governing as a majority, you're still making compromises with your party. You add to the fact that the Conservative Party has got increasingly fractured on all sorts of different issues. It's not a simple binary of support for one person or another, or one position or another. And that makes it difficult for any Prime Minister. And there are tried and tested things that you have to do. But the problem is, once you start to go down the sort of slippery slope of alienating or annoying backbenchers, especially when you have increasingly experienced former ministers who are going to the backbenches with access to grind because they lost out on a job or they didn't, you know, get a job in her new government. This just makes it harder and harder. And my colleague Alice Lilly has set out a blog for us this week where she talked about the various challenges that, I think I called her Theresa May, but Liz Truss faces on the parliamentary front. And we're already seeing one of those come to a head. So she's still got plenty more to come. And it's going to take a great deal of sophistication in terms of that parliamentary party handling in order to navigate that. And that really does start today with how these changes are seen, and also what she says in this press conference shortly.
Briefly, we're going to have this news conference in just a few minutes' time from the Prime Minister. What does she need to do you think, in essence, to maintain the stability of her government, but also her own position as Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult when you see any kind of U-turn. It's almost the worse it gets, the bigger the U-turn that you've got to make. And there are different elements of that. I mean, it's one thing to just sort of reverse the policy that you've done. But if in sticking with the policy for so long, you've created more damage, then you have to do more. You have to go further in order to sort of be able to reverse course on the damage done. And obviously, this is a big move, changing the personnel. That sends out a strong signal. There's obviously been some strategic thinking going on about what kind of U-turn do we need to do. If we've decided we want to fix this, what do we need to do to get to there? I think the big question, though, is not just what she's going to do in policy terms, but what's going to be the tone of that. Is there going to be a sense that, she accepts that some of this was got wrong, or will it be a continuation of, talking about the sort of wider international financial situation that she found herself in, or talking about failures on the comms around the policy, the way it was rolled out? So I think a lot of her party will also be looking at the tone of it and also the undercurrents that come with it. Does she claim any kind of responsibility for herself? Okay. So yeah, it's a really interesting case study almost in U-turns and whether or not she is able to achieve what she wants to do.
Okay, Catherine, we're out of time, but thank you very much for being with us, Catherine Haddon.